Hi guys, and welcome to Full Sail University Hall of Fame presentation. This is the future of virtual reality game development. Thank you all for coming. I hope this is where you were supposed to be today. Bear with us for a few minutes. We're having some fun moments this morning. Please put your hands together and welcome our host, Mr. Jason Hinders. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate it. Thank you guys all for coming. Thank you to these fine Hall of Fame people for showing up, right? I appreciate you guys' time. Really, I do a lot. So thank you, guys. I just wanted to, first start by asking you guys, since this is about VR, what your experience is with it and your interest in it currently.
You start with me?
Sure.
Cool. Hey, guys. I'm Kerry Allen. I'm the senior UI programmer over at id Software. My experience with VR so far has been with a title that we shipped, Doom VFR. I was there in Germany when we started work on that project, and was there on and off throughout the development, back and forth between projects, but mostly on that project all the way through till it shipped. And it was a lot of fun. It was a fun project to get into.
Yeah, cool.
I'm Elbert Perez, CTO of Doghead Simulations. Experience with VR, worked on the HTC Vive from the very beginning as a prototyper, all the way up to we shipped it 6 months after. Quit that job to start Doghead Simulations with Chance. And now we're doing VR communications and collaborations for education and training.
What he said, basically. No, my first... I guess when I got really inspired about VR, I mean, in the 90s, I was into the idea, but it really never came to fruition. But when the Oculus DK1 came out, when I was still working at Infinity Ward, and I tried this thing, and it was, pixelated and had some issues, but it was finally like, wow, I think VR is actually finally going to get there really soon. And ever since trying that, I was ready to leave the team and wanted to work in VR. And after I quit Infinity Ward, we ended up working on some prototyping a game together that didn't go too far until we switched over to doing VR conferencing.
Cool, thank you guys. So where do you guys kind of see VR going in the future? Or what really are you interested in seeing happening kind of coming up? Are there things you guys are really excited about seeing happening?
I'm really excited for the Valve Index coming out very soon. The Quest, which actually just shipped yesterday. The Index I really want to try because the refresh rate, 120 to 144 hertz. Mm-hmm. At most, you're not going to see necessarily a gigantic difference on a computer monitor between, say, 90 and 120. Right. But when you have a image blown up filling your entire vision, 120 hertz is I'm guessing once you try it, you're going to say it's necessary. It's like going to be the gold standard, Right. Have you tried 120, 144 hertz?
Yeah. It does make a big difference. So with VR, you want to get the highest resolution you can and the highest frame rate you can. If either of those drop significantly, then people are going to start to get sick. And you want to keep them consistent as well, because otherwise, again, people get sick. There's a lot of ways you can make people sick in VR.
Yep.
Yeah, and that's something you got to be mindful about when you're developing experiences for them. But yeah, definitely keeping the frame rate and the resolution high and consistent are the easiest ways to combat that.
Yeah, I'm excited for the content, right? Because any content that we make in VR takes a while, and there's a lot of content being worked on that's unannounced, that's being, future stuff. Pretty excited about that, especially with the new hardware and pairing that accessibility. So now that we have the Quest, the all-in-one systems, that we can actually VR anywhere. Like, I literally could just pull out my VR headset and just start being in VR and ignore all of you if I wanted to, which is pretty cool. But I'm not going to do that, so.
Yeah, I mean, one of the problems now, right, like the all-in-one packages, right, are going to be a big thing. And when those get more popular, like obviously that will help out a lot, right? Another thing I want to ask you guys about a little bit was, were there particular things that you guys ran into that were troublesome when you were working with VR? Like are there special things you had to do with doing VR with Rumi to make sure that, it was usable, didn't make people sick, right? Things like that.
Yeah, with with Doom, one of the things we noticed, there's no conventions really for UI in VR yet. And we're starting to form them, but there's more now than there were even when we started Doom VFR. But simple things that we've done forever outside of VR, like clicking a button. Like everyone knows how to click a button, whether it's on PC or on their phone or whatever. But you put a button in a VR space, actually in a virtual world, and people don't know if they have to actually physically reach out and touch it, if they touch it and pull a trigger, or if they point at it. Or they don't know that instinctively yet. So that's a challenge you have to deal with. I think that's really one of the more exciting things about VR for me, is that there's this whole frontier of UI that just hasn't been explored, and coming up with these conventions and trying to figure out how people are going to use VR, that's really exciting to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the convention part is going to be tricky, right? Because traditionally it's a 2D screen that we're used to from when we grew up. Even the first computers, so a calculator, a monitor, a TV screen, we have constraints in a 2D environment. Even though you might say, hey, we've been playing 3D games, but you're still looking through a 2D interface, mouse, keyboard, controller. Now we have an interface that literally could be anywhere, right? The buttons might not even make sense in virtual reality. We'll find some new interaction that maybe a gesture or maybe sing to it. I don't know. But right now, the way we present information in VR are 2D panels, right? But why are we doing that? There's no reason to limit ourselves there. But it's just, I think, technologically, but more importantly, our perception and view of how information has been so trained on a 2D thing, like piece of paper, right, is a 2D thing, that we have to rewire our brains, or maybe even the next generation, you guys, are the ones that will discover that, because you have less, I guess, baggage in the 2D world than we do. So that's pretty exciting for me.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, there's also, we're evolving different ways to move in VR, and there's been a lot of different things that have been experimented with, and now, instead of just choosing one, often for a VR experience, they'll let you choose, do you want the very safe teleportation where you're not going to get sick, or do you want to be able to move the thumb pad, which could make some people sick, or some people a little bit sick at first until they use it some more and they get used to it. So that's the thing.
Yeah, I mean, that makes me super sick. So
Yeah.
and I think it does a lot of people, right?
Yeah, you have to try and find the balance. Like there's always going to be people, if you don't have the option to move with the D-pad, then people are going to be like, oh no, I want that. Because for 50% of people, like that's how they do it. That they prefer that over teleporting around. But the other 50% get sick.
Yeah.
So you want to make a game for all of them.
Yeah.
So you got to make it work. You got to be able to teleport and use a D-pad. Yeah.
Yeah, it seems like a lot of people are going to that, right? Like give you an option, right?
Yeah.
But I know different people prefer different things, right? Like I can't do the walking around. I get super sick. So, were there any other things that you guys like kind of had issues with when you're working on like Doom VR? Were there things that became problematic with it being VR?
Adoption rate? of the
Yeah.
hardware?
Yeah.
Yeah, everyone's like, at this point, if you asked us 3 years ago, there'll be like hundreds of thousands and millions of headsets. But maybe in China, sure. But it's hard to make VR, right? I mean, it's not a surprise to us, right? For any AAA developer or anyone who's made games before in 3D, we know it's hard to do it in a 2D screen, but it's even harder with VR because we can't control where a player looks, what they do. They have infinite energy that they can transmit from the real world into the virtual world.
Right.
So it breaks all the conventional systems we've been used to and techniques. So it's kind of reimagining how we do things.
Yeah.
Yeah, the install base is definitely a big deal, especially in AAA. A lot of AAA titles that you play on Xbox or PlayStation, they can cost hundreds of millions of dollars to make, and there just isn't the financial justification yet to spend that much money on developing a VR title, and that's a shame. Like when the install base gets there, and VR titles can start making that sort of money, then they'll start getting more and more elaborate, and just we'll start seeing some really crazy stuff with VR.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, like the base isn't there right now, right? Like there aren't tons of units out there, not near the amount that you sell, PC or any other platform, right? So I do know it hasn't been as many titles, right, going to VR. So
Well, I mean, and that's seeing it from the entertainment perspective, right?
right.
However, in the enterprise side, I mean, they love VR. I mean, when you talk to enterprise and businesses, they see the potential. They see that, hey, if we put in a few $1,000s for this VR setup and some money on the development of software, they can save millions of dollars easily, right? And that is something that helps keep VR kind of front and center and not kind of fade away like some, like 3D TV, right?
Yeah.
So it's it's a technology just needs to be adopted more. It's just that it's a different path than what we saw from cell phones and computers. It's some of it is entertainment, but a lot of it's going through the enterprise and business side.
Yeah, I mean, definitely can save them tons of money, right? And can save people's lives too, right? Because you can
Exactly.
try those things.
You can die over and over again and not die.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Oops, I messed up the operation, right? Like, yeah, that's probably better as VR than it is real life. But anyway, so are there like some tech coming out real soon? I know you guys mentioned a few, right? But are there things in the future that you guys see happening too?
Oh,
Or
stuff that we can't discuss.
Stuff that you can't discuss? Sure, yeah. Well, no, I mean, obviously there's some things you can't talk about, right? But there are some things on the near horizon probably.
We're starting to see eye tracking. We've got the Vive Pro Eye has eye tracking.
Yeah.
And that's cool just mostly from a data analytics standpoint. They're going to use that for like, what are people looking at when you go to a grocery store or something,
Yeah.
A lot of marketing companies will use that. For software like ours, will use it to add more emotion to the avatars. Because
Right.
our eyes are very telling, the way they move and what they do. If that's mirrored one-to-one, you're going to look at someone and it's going to be a little bit more of an empathetic conversation.
Or even eyebrow tracking technology. If they can actually track your eyebrows too, that's a lot of.
Oh, really?
When you when you do that, right? You're like, hey, there's a lot of meaning in that, right?
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
communicate with your eyebrows. So it's weird when people don't have eyebrows.
Yeah, I don't have much. Anyway, so do you see other like tracking things that you think are going to come out too?
So right now, the index controllers are pretty interesting because they have way more things that we're tracking. That it's a controller, but it's not in a sense like a hybrid of a hand tracking and a controller, and this opens up so many possibilities without making it like a hand glove where you have way more range of motion, but just the amount of input you can do and the different UX and interactions you can do because you can just open your hand and not drop your controller, which is, I think, great.
Yeah. Well, and the tactile thing
Yes,
of it,
exactly.
right? So you can actually feel what's going on.
And you can give
right?
someone the finger if you wanted to.
Yeah. We're going to see lots of emerging technologies that aren't necessarily VR related kind of merge into VR as well. Like there's kids now that have developed gloves that will actually translate sign language into, they'll actually say what the person's signing. And so we've got technology to detect like your different gestures and different finger positioning, and I think things like that are going to make their way into VR and be used in virtual worlds.
Yeah.
Be able to use them in the virtual environments to interact with everything. I think it's going to be good.
Yeah. I mean, the tactile thing's obviously real important for some things, like medical or flight simulators or anything like that, right? I mean, obviously it can be translated to games too, but it's super important for those enterprise kind of things, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, that stuff's really neat. You guys have all worked in this area for a long time, right? Like, and Chance touched a little bit on how he got started. How did you guys kind of get started in interest in VR?
Well, a lot of it's from the 90s, because I grew up in Manila, and for some reason someone thought it was cool to bring the VR pods from the 90s into the mall, so I was like, got to try it there. I mean, my head hurt, my neck strained, but I saw the feature, like, oh, Lawnmower Man, hey, Matrix, and we forgot about it because Virtual Boy came out and killed it. I think that's what happened.
Yeah, now they're trying to kill VR again.
Yeah, with VR. But that just never left, right? It's like that everyone imagines the Matrix as the ultimate, or at this point, Sword Art Online, because every time everyone keeps asking me about that. I'm like, whoa, I don't know, maybe, sure. But yeah, it's just that we all yearn to be in a virtual world or somewhere where we have superpowers, right? And VR is that technology that allows us to have superpowers. That's why I think for me that's great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got to play with VR in the 90s as well, and I loved it back then. It's not something that everyone had in their homes back then, but they had arcade, like these special arcade systems that you'd see in the arcades in the 90s, and they were a lot of fun to play with. For me, recently, when my boss came over to Germany, I was out in Germany, and he brought over a Vive headset before the Vive had officially released. And he said, yeah, set this up and, give it a try. Let everyone in the office give it a try and, go down, grab the marketing guys and run them through it as well and see what everyone thinks and let me know what you think of it. And so I did. I set it up and played around with it. And I was like, wow, this is really cool. And someone suggested that we bring Doom across to the Vive at that point. And that's really where it all came from. We were already working on VR, but that was where Doom and VR kind of got intertwined. And when I first saw Doom running on the Vive, just seeing this world, we'd already worked on Doom 2016. We'd been working on that for a while, and that had come out, and seeing that through like real first person, like actually looking up and seeing the demons, like, oh wow, this thing is really like 10 feet tall, and I have to look up at it. It gives you a whole different perspective, seeing things that are really that tall, when you actually have to physically lift your neck up to look at them.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, perspective is a big thing that you get out of VR, right? That you don't get out of a flat thing. So that stuff's all super interesting. How about other integrated devices that you guys think might come eventually, right? Like there are some now, right? Some of them are kind of bulky and kind of hard to deal with, right? Where do you guys kind of see those things going?
So the Valve Index has this slot up front, right, with a USB plug. So they're already thinking forward of what things they could put. They've put Starburst in there, which I saw some engineers like, why you put Starburst up there? Or LCD screens. You can put the Leap tracker up there. But I think looking forward in the future, my wish really is for like peripheral manufacturers to have a standard so that when you create a joystick or a console, that there's actually a digital twin equivalent to that, so that when you plug it in, it will just show up virtually in front of you so that you know where it is in relation from the virtual world and the real world. And I think that's going to really help make it easier for people to use peripherals or integrate real world training into a virtual environment. So
Yeah, I mean the standards thing, like we touched on that, right? That's still something that's not really there, right?
Yeah.
And it causes a lot of confusion amongst a lot of people. So I don't know where we're sitting for time, but do you guys want? Where are we sitting?
we're at 10:23.
What's that?
It's 10:23.
Oh, okay. Oh, we still have plenty of time. That's
Yeah.
good. All right. But we are gonna open this up for questions probably in a few minutes, right? And you guys are free to ask questions as they stated earlier. Are there other things that you guys wanted to kind of talk about?
There's a good book out there called History of the Future. Is that Blake Harris?
Oh, from Blake Harris, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's History of the Future by Blake Harris. If you want to catch up on like this recent VR revolution, it's definitely a good read. It's not a boring historical book. It's pretty exciting. So yeah, check it out.
Cool. Is there advice you have for people that are interested in getting into kind of the VR world, like how they could kind of research or get involved in it? Are there ways you guys suggest to do that to people?
There's ways all over campus. Like there's students that are interested in VR. There's lots of opportunities to work on VR projects, whether it's game jams or student final projects or whatever. There's a lot of opportunities you guys have to play around with VR. Getting into VR is really not as difficult as it sounds. It's not like you can download the SDKs for any VR environment and just start coding and have something up and running in a few hours, no problem. It doesn't really take a whole lot to get into. So yeah, if you're interested, just look into it and yeah, you can be coding VR this weekend.
Yeah,
And,
yeah, definitely.
and you know, coding obviously super important, but it's not just a developer thing, right? There's so many tools out there for artists, musicians, or even performers. So if you want to get into VR but don't want to get into the coding part, you can create art. We have so many tools out there. If you want to DJ, you want to create music, mix music, you can do that too. You can even for exploring experiences, so that if you are interested in making something, like if you're a film student, for example, I want to make something for VR, you need to kind of experience what a VR experience is, because the important part about VR, it's a different medium, right? Like we treat comics, movies, film, video games differently. You need to treat VR differently. You can't just say, hey, we're going to stick comics in there and do 90% comics stuff. Sure, you can mix it where there's some elements of comics or film or media in there, but do treat VR as its own, because when you are in a VR headset, guess what? You want to explore, you want to touch. And when you're in film, you are you're an audience looking through a lens of someone else, right? In VR, your user can look around. So these little differences, or not even little, they're huge differences that may seem little, is something that you need to embrace now, so that when you start creating VR experiences, you understand the medium, so that you're creating the right content for that medium.
Yeah, you hear the term sometimes VR films, and that's just a horrible term, because that's like saying it's a book play, or it's a movie song. You know, like, what?
Yeah, it's just VR, right? Yeah, that's kind of odd, right? And people are still kind of doing that, but a lot of people just don't know how to treat it yet, right? Like, there is a lot of film stuff going on with it, obviously too, right? But it's so new that I think people are kind of having a tough time treating it, right?
But something that I'm most excited about, I think, gaming-wise, is the communal aspects. Like, a lot of people think, oh, VR is really isolating. Well, if you think about it, we're all staring at our phones on social media, Facebook, isolated already. The difference is now people will spend more time doing things less isolating with technology. You know, when you're playing like a game like Onward or any kind of multiplayer experience and you're working with your teammates, that's amazing. They're like next to you and you feel like you're hanging out with them. And you know, when I play multiplayer games, I don't feel like we're hanging out. I feel like we're playing a game together.
Yep.
But in VR, you look over, you see their body language, you know, you hear their voice, you know, you can talk and point at things. It's a really cool experience.
Yeah, I think the social like interaction with VR is super interesting, right?
Yeah.
And seems like a space that could be explored a whole lot more, right? And might be one of the things that really makes it take off quite a bit, right?
Yeah, I'm doing by the way, I'm doing a talk at 5 o'clock today on social VR and education and how that impacts it. So if you guys are around 5 o'clock, it's in the app. So.
Okay, cool. Anything else you guys? And I did want to mention too, like Kerry said, right? There are tons of ways you guys can get involved directly, right? You guys can hit me up about that. I can get you guys in contact with whoever, right? If you're interested in working with people on campus, I can definitely help with that. So, or you can try to get a hold of any of us, right?
We're not that hard to find.
What's that?
We're not that hard to find.
No, that's true. That's true. You're especially not hard to find with the red hair. Yeah, that's true. So unless you guys have other things that you want to comment right now on, I was going to probably open it up for questions if you guys.
Here's use Roomy. Is anyone here uses Roomy? 3, 4, 5 people. Okay, we need to change that.
Yeah. we should.
You can actually see people out there.
Yeah, barely, yeah.
I'm blind now, so I can see.
Yeah, I see light. All right, guys. Anything else you guys wanted to talk about real quick, or we'll go ahead and open it up for questions?
Open up for questions.
Okay, cool. So we'll go ahead and open up for questions. If you have a question, just raise your hand. They'll bring the mic to you.
So I had a question about, so we talked a lot about the hardware advances in VR, but we didn't really talk about what still hasn't been done on a software level. Like, let's say it's some games right now in VR starting to do like full body experiences where they're just not floating hands, right? So in that area, for example, the game Boneworks now supports like full body movement, hanging from stuff, along with the first person control kind of thing. So what are your opinions on that kind of stuff?
They're tricky to do with IK, because like especially if you're looking at yourself or other humans, we're very in tune of how people walk. When someone has a small limp or maybe they sprain their ankle, you know exactly something happened, right? Because their gait a little bit different. So we're so in tune with posture that we don't even have really good IK or even those smart IKs to make it look like it's cool and natural. And when you pair it with hands that if it loses tracking and your hands fly out 10 feet in front of you, what's going to happen? Your bone's going to stretch out or you're going to start wiggling around and the feet just looks odd.
What's going to happen is you're going to throw up.
Yeah.
Yeah, people are very in tune. Like, if we try and calculate where your elbow is, for example, and your elbow, we decide that your elbow is 6 inches away from where your elbow really is, that will be very jarring to someone. So it's going to have to be more of a hardware solution, I think, for things like that. Because that disconnect when you know something is real, like when you know where your elbow really is versus where we're telling you your elbow is, that's where you start getting the sickness come in. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Okay.
Where? Oh, there.
So the challenges of building VR environments for different people's accessibility and stuff, can you guys just kind of talk about that? I know, Kerry, you had said some kind of stuff about height and perspective. And we were doing the Roomy thing the other day for testing, and then you had seen something about somebody came in and they were different height. How do you deal with that for people different like heights or
Well,
people that
if their height is off, it's probably because the calibration was done incorrectly, or maybe they did it correctly, and that's just PCVR. Sometimes it messes up. But yeah, it's not really much. Well, at least for our software, it's not an issue. Height could be an issue for maybe a certain game, but for us, it's just a cosmetic thing. So it's not really a showstopper in our case.
Yeah. I think it's not really like the height thing isn't too much of a problem. I think it's just trying to train people how to do things that they already know how to do, and kind of account for that in virtual reality. Like there was one guy, I was demoing Doom VR at E3 or it was E3 or QuakeCon or one of the events, and I told the guy, hey, yeah, turn around and you'll see what you're looking for. You'll see your objective if you turn around. And he's like, oh, which button is it to turn around? Yeah. I was like, no, turn round. He's like, oh, okay. So training people to do that. I also came across that a little bit when I worked with Microsoft on Kinect. With Kinect, you tell people to jump, and if you get 100 people and tell them to jump, and that's all you tell them to do, you get 100 different styles of jumping. You get people that their feet don't even leave the floor, and you get people that go like 4 or 5 feet in the air. Well, not 5 feet in the air, but yeah. Yeah, you get people that have a very exaggerated jump and people that barely move at all. So I think trying to train people like, okay, when I tell you to jump, I mean like really jump, or when I tell you to turn around, like really turn around, because everyone knows what jump and turn around are in everyday life, but it's still it's weird that it's a foreign concept to them in VR.
Have you found that, at least in my experience, I find that that's more of an issue with younger people because they're thinking about it as from a game perspective. Someone who's older, if you tell them to pick something up, they just do it.
Yeah.
It's like they don't know about games, you know? Yeah. So they only know what they know in real life. And so I'm seeing like older generations, like 55, 60 plus, like getting in and just, finding the controls and interface more intuitive because they're just reacting how they would in real life, which is kind of what you need to do in VR.
Well, also typically the older crowd that would get into VR would probably be more excited for the tech versus like a kid would, yeah, just try it. Oh, I don't know what's happening, right?
Yeah.
I don't know. It's interesting because in a virtual reality environment, the rules are different from the real world, right? And you have to set that every time. It's kind of like having a good tutorial for a game. If a game does not have a good tutorial, especially if it's a game that's not usually played by a million people, like a first-person shooter, most likely people will get it, right? But if you're an indie game or something, you have to really explain the weird mechanics you're doing. And it's even more important in VR to do that, like what gestures work. And even then, right, if you have gestures, remember, like a controller is way more accessible to a lot more people than moving around, right? Because you might have a disability, or maybe you have a bad shoulder, or maybe missing an arm or something, right? So knowing these different physiology of each individual user is important, and take in consideration accessibility even more so now than we usually do. So.
Cool. Thanks. Other questions?
Hello. Yeah, so what we've been addressing is mostly the near future. In your opinion, what do you think is the ultimate potential for virtual reality, like 10, 20, 30 years in the future?
That one's challenging. Like, I think of like with mobile phones like 30 years ago. Like, people knew what mobile phones were 30 years ago, and if you'd have told them, how's this going to evolve? Like, they'd have never come up with what we have today. So honestly, I don't know. I'm kind of excited. Like, I'm excited for what is going to be the future of VR, because I honestly don't know. I think a lot of technologies are going to combine. We're seeing a lot of things in gaming, a lot of technologies in gaming that are coming together. We're seeing things like esports take off. We're seeing big things in streaming. Consoles are getting more and more powerful, higher resolution. Consoles are also going away at the same time. It's crazy. Yeah, I think a lot of technologies are going to combine, and VR is just going to be one more thing. Like, I honestly have no idea where it's going to be, but that's what's exciting to me.
I think we're going to have MMO reality shows.
MMO
Yeah.
reality shows.
Yeah, I mean, think about it. You put like a camera in a VR environment, and you let camera people go around and record what's happening. You have everyone who's playing. You do like Critical Role. It could be voice actors or something. They play a character, and you shoot everything. You edit together a story of like what's occurring in that MMO world.
Well, it'll be like the Office MMO.
Yeah, it could be. No, I mean, people watch like reality shows about stupid, boring stuff. You add dragons and sword fights and stuff like that'd be way more exciting.
It'll be a Sword Art
The
Online.
Bachelor.
Describing Sword Art Online. Except they're not trapped in the VR headset.
Yeah.
Wait, you
Try
don't
not
like
to
The
do-
Bachelor?
The Bachelor VR?
You don't like that show?
No.
Oh,
I don't know. I haven't had cable in like 10 years. So.
okay. Yeah.
I think hardware-wise, what we want. So right now, the perception of VR when you put it on is this bulky technology. It's hot. It's uncomfortable. Only like the most hardcore people would stay there for 4 hours, right? But I think in 20, 30 years, our headsets will be like our glasses, where it's a combination of AR, VR, and some other immersive technology. Like sound is super important too. If you guys ever tried the Bose AR glasses, it's amazing because it's like someone's literally speaking in your head, but they're all over you. But you can get so much information that way. So if you combine that sound, AR, VR together, and now when I look all of you, I can see maybe your tweets or your stats, or if you're paying attention, if I'm teaching, and I can just shock your head or something.
Yeah.
But I won't do that because we're good teachers here.
I'll do that. I have no problem doing that at all.
So having that social, and it's really about social acceptance as well, right? I remember back when digital cameras first came out, they were so worried because there's no shutter sound, right? I'm like, really? Because you're gonna take an illegal picture. I mean, like now it's taking selfies everywhere. Like, it's actually rude not to take selfies with someone that you just met, right? So the social acceptance is super important, and that's really what's going to drive. And so why we have Snapchat filters, right? I mean, these crazy thing.
What's Snapchat?
What? Huh? So we can switch genders now, right? So it's the hot thing.
Have you not seen what you look like, gender bent?
You never gender bended?
I think the people in the office do that to me a lot. Anyway,
You want to be my waifu?
no comment. I'm sure my students do that too, but whatever. I don't know.
That's exciting.
It's exciting.
I think within 5 years, we're going to start seeing a big call from people, politicians, doctors, to like actually figure out about at what point do we regulate these experiences, or at least have some kind of official warning? Because, you know, we're getting to the point where we can fix or we can create PTSD in VR, you know?
Yeah.
And that's going to become more and more true. And as much as like my whole life I've heard, oh, video games are like, you know, kids are playing games are getting violent, like, which isn't true. There's been many studies that like, you know, say that's not true. But with VR, it's a much more powerful medium than looking at a screen in front of your face.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see where that goes, because I know it's going to happen, and it's probably going to be within 5 years. I mean, typically, people in Washington are kind of behind technology. So, you know, with the Oculus Quest coming out, like, maybe regular people will be asking this, but they'll start seeing this in 5 years when they saw some violent game or something that hit Fox or MSNBC, and they'll complain about it, and they'll be like, we need to regulate this. It's
Yeah.
going to happen soon.
So, question actually. Who here has not tried VR? Raise your hand. Oh, no.
Wow.
Where's the
Only-
three of you?
only a few.
But that's good, though, right?
Yeah, that's only a few.
But you guys gotta try VR, right? And that's one thing, right? Once you try VR, and obviously most of you have, that's why you're here. One thing to remember is that anything that you're afraid of real life, or if you get sick in something in real life, that translates in VR. Even if it's the lowest poly, lowest resolution experience, it will happen to you. So it's something that kind of helps with introspective, like, oh yeah, I'm car sick, and then you can kind of actually even figure that. You can do self-diagnosis using VR, which is pretty interesting. I think someone fixed their lazy eye.
Lazy eye, yeah. It's like a lazy eye
Oh, really?
exercise.
Yeah, he researched it, and then he's like, I'm gonna fix my lazy eye, and then
Wow.
he used VR to train his eye. It's pretty cool.
I fixed my fear of chupacabras.
It's like they're not real.
I popped in VR, PR, went down to Puerto Rico. PR, VR, it would be better, actually. Yeah. What Albert won't tell you is he won't play horror games.
Yeah, I do.
Well, I won't.
Yeah, yeah.
I won't play horror games. Just like
In general.
2D. No, I won't do it.
Yeah.
I won't do
Yeah,
it.
that's why I can't
Yeah.
do Doom.
I was too.
Can't do Doom.
No.
I
don't
live
want
alone.
demons screaming at me and trying to bite my head off. Why?
Well,
Yeah.
bite their heads off first. Show
Well-
them who's boss. That's
Well, if you let me bite their heads off with not
Wait.
having a canned animation, I'll do it.
I think that like what Chance was saying.
Chupacabras?
With like what's that?
No, go ahead.
Puerto
Like you
Rico
kind of
VR?
touched on the ethics of things. Like I think technology in general is something that that ethics needs to be updated constantly. Just the things we come up with just advance every single day, and Washington is very slow to adapt. So we kind of have to be careful with that. But yeah, we're going to see that not just in VR, but in all technologies. Like you think of like prosthetics. Like 50 years ago, if you lost a limb, you had like a wooden leg, and that was it. And now you have people that have surgery that have prosthetics that are almost as good as a natural limb. And eventually, if the technology keeps advancing, you'll get to a point where prosthetic limbs can be better than natural limbs. And then it'll start to become a very ethical question, like, do I cut my kid's arms off so he can have better arms? You know? Like,
I mean, I've done that in RimWorld like many times.
yeah, yeah. Like that is. I think that's going to be. We laugh about it now, but I think that questions like that.
Well, it's
are
already
gonna be
happened,
things
right?
that will-
Because there's that sprinter
Yeah.
with the legs and
Yep.
the blades, and like, no, he's too fast. I'm like,
Yep.
oh.
Right.
Yep.
The human augmentation
Yeah.
reality is coming up.
Yeah. And when you can use those prosthetic limbs in VR as well, then that'll solve the elbow popping thing. Yeah.
Just have a
Yeah.
drill hand.
Yeah.
No, another thing
Yeah.
too, like remember, like as we think about VR as a medium, think of it as a tool, right? It's a neutral technology. It's not like a weapon. That's when you think of a weapon, what do you do with that? You basically either harm someone, defend someone, whatever. But with VR, it's a tool to do whatever, right? So it's a very broad use tool. And just think about that, right? It could be used for bad, good, neutral, whatever fantasies you have. I'm not going to talk about that. But but we're already doing that with, games, the other media. So treat VR, like I said, like, treat VR as its own medium, but a way more powerful medium because of how we can get immersed and really forget where we are. Because our senses, right? We are sensory-based meat bags, right? So we see visuals, the input of smell, touch, right? If you replace those with a digital representation, then our brains just accept that as reality. So just think about that.
Robots.
Robots.
Okay.
So first of all, thank you guys for coming. I think my biggest question right now is, for right now, VR, from what I've seen, has been a lot based on immersion and immersifying the player into, a different world. When do you think that evolves into the competition that we see as far as esports goes? Because at first games were the same way. Games were first immersion and into a different world, and then it evolved into a competition. When do you think that happens with VR?
It's already happened. There's already VR leagues. Onwards played. Pavlov, I think. I don't know if anything. He doesn't have multiplayer, so I
The
guess.
Doom one.
There's nothing I know of right now for like VR Doom esports.
Yeah, it's single player.
But it is coming. Like it's going to be out there. Like
Echo Arena is huge too.
yeah, VR esports is coming.
It just looks awkward because they have weird micro movements.
Yeah.
And they don't what are they doing?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's going to be more of a traditional sport as it evolves and get feet tracking. You're going to be playing sports in VR or something. So I'm excited that there's a lot of people that love playing games, but if you're playing video games, you're sitting there, not moving at all.
Yeah. Well, and the one thing there's more and more every year I see, especially now with the Quest, is because we have inside tracking, you can have a bigger area. So you can play laser tag now in the same size as this room, with the other players in a virtual environment. And they've showed that with the Quest, the Void, and there's so many other arcade experiences that do that. They make it kind of more cooperative right now versus adversarial, but it's becoming more PvP based now as well. So.
Yeah, I mean, you can take any warehouse now and turn it into like a theme park kind of using some quests and Unity. You could just build your own game inside of a room scale size experience.
Warehouse scale.
Warehouse scale, yeah.
And I believe that we have a question from one of our online participants.
We do. Natalie from Game Design would like to know if you were interested in designing for VR, what skills would you recommend studying up on, practicing C++ and Unreal?
Yeah, if you're a programmer, then C++ and then one of the engines, whether it's Unreal or Unity, they're very good places to start.
Or C Sharp.
Yeah, or C Sharp. Yeah.
Visual Basic.
Visual Basic.
Probably not Visual Basic.
I'm not a programmer. I don't know.
No, not Visual Basic.
Yeah. C Sharp or C++, and then one of the engines I think is a good way to start getting into coding for VR.
And the engines are free, right? They just charge you on the back end, so you can go download those and mess with them. Right?
Yeah, but definitely have a VR headset, right? It could be an old Oculus Go, or it could be an old Oculus Rift or Vive, whatever it is. You gotta have that medium, right? Because you can't really make film and not see it and where it's supposed to show up, right? So make sure you have the headset.
Cobalt?
Well, yeah.
No, not
Cobalt?
that one either.
Is that
Yeah.
is it the D&D creature or the language? Cobalt?
Yeah, it's both.
Both. Well,
Yeah.
different spelling.
Cobalt
That
with a K or with
that
a
one's
C?
that one's
The
hopefully
C,
dead.
that's the language, right?
Yeah,
that
C
one's-
is the language.
Yeah, C's. Yeah.
They even have kobolds in Dungeons and Dragons anymore?
Yeah, they do.
I haven't seen Cobalts in a while.
They start with
Yeah.
a K with a D
Yes.
at the end as well. Sorry, we're nerds.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah.
Old man. talking about D&D
Back in the
back
second
the day.
edition.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
You old
Second
guys.
ed.
Have to roll 40 dice.
We got tacos and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Another question?
How's it going, guys?
Hey.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
All right, so I got a good one for you, I think, here. Something a little near term. So next generation gaming looks like there's a lot of streaming going on. We got Stadia announced. Microsoft and Sony just announced some kind of streaming partnership. We don't really know how that's all going to play out, but let's just for a moment say, oh, it turns out the PS5 generation is really significantly switching to a streaming model. This is something that's not going to work for VR, as I understand it. So I just thought I'd throw that out there and
Why
wonder how
wouldn't-
you think, like, how the hardware will have to diverge, or
Why wouldn't it work?
because of the latency between the server systems where they're streaming the graphics. You think you think that's
It's
solvable?
doable. I don't know if it's solved yet, but it's doable.
I mean, isn't it literally just physically too far to do it?
there's ways to improve it. You can kind of merge like some of the data processing up in the data center and some on the hardware itself. But I remember talking to a few companies a few years ago. They're already working on streaming VR because it is, if you have the power of a data center, right? Because VR is a very hard thing to visualize and render because of the requirements. We have 144 hertz screens now, so with insane 8K resolutions, right? We need a lot of compute power for that. And guess what? Data centers have that compute power. We just have to find that solution, or maybe a hybrid. Sometimes you go on board, sometimes you go stream data in, but it is a necessary thing that we need to do. And especially with Stadia and the Microsoft Sony partnership, it is a technology that will be solved. And we did say, right, in the 90s, oh, VR is dead, and look where VR is now, right? So you just need to have a little bit of faith and a little bit of patience. Well, yeah.
Well, I think it's got a lot of things that we need to solve for sure. But I think seeing Google invest in things like Stadia is them kind of taking a step in that direction. I don't think it's too many more steps in that direction we'll have to take before it does get completely solved. I think we will get there. Yeah. Hey.
Hi guys, I'm Leona from Computer Animation. I had a question about your thoughts on the Tesla suit. I know there's a lot of controversy about how feeling everything in VR, some people don't and some people do. I know I can't wait for that to happen, but what are your thoughts about doing that and achieving that as far as the effects it would have for the body?
Well, think about it, right? You have a choice. You have a choice to wear the suit or not, right? Compared to the real world, if someone punched you in the face, you don't have a choice of feeling the pain, right? In VR, you can say, "Hey, I don't want to feel the being punched in the face or somewhere else," right? So, I think it's a very weird, but not. It just gives you more choice, and if you've ever read Ready Player One, as he kind of went through the suit progression. He would put limits on how much pain to feel and all that stuff. So you have all that, and I think exploring that. And some people may want more pain or less pain, or instead of pain, they smell roses. I don't know.
I think you've got to be careful with people, especially online stuff. Like when you can actually physically cause someone to feel something, then I think you're crossing a certain line that going back to ethics. Where is it okay for one person to make someone else feel a certain way? I think if you take steps to make sure that you can't like have one person really hurt someone else, or not even hurt, just like abuse and like sexual abuse or anything like that, just touch them how they don't want to be touched. Anything like that, you got to be careful to avoid.
Most social VR programs, the ones that aren't closed off, that are open, have implemented like a personal bubble in a sense that basically keeps people from going right in your face, which is kind of nice. And the thing about trolling online in VR is there's less trolls, because there's a lot of people that'll troll online, and in real life they're like somewhat decent people, but in VR they're just total trolls. But then there's people who are just assholes all the way around in life and online, and so because that face-to-face or that the interaction is more lifelike, you get less people trolling because it feels awkward to troll people. But the worst trolls make you feel worse than you would normally, because it's like you're there and they're trolling you, you know?
Yeah.
And a lot of it's psychological, right? I mean, think about this, right? If someone came up to you in like VR chat or Rec Room, started whispering to your ear, and you weren't like, whoa, wait, what? Like, you don't need a bodysuit to inflict that kind of pain or psychological creepiness, right? So, even with video games, when you teabag someone, that's like a psychological like dominance thing, right?
Have you done that in deep VR yet?
Teabag someone?
Yeah.
Who said I haven't?
And I'm asking if you've done it. I'm not saying.
Yeah, maybe.
All right.
We only have upper torso.
It makes more sense if you play a lot of games. It's less explicit than it's.
Yeah. Well, Well, it's like a squat workout at
Yes,
that point.
yes.
So.
Right.
So
We should have a whole panel on this next year.
I think we only have a few minutes, Larry.
Yeah, we have time for probably one more question. There's another question that we can squeeze in. We'd be happy to.
Cut this conversation.
So anyway,
Hello?
Hi.
I have a question. You were talking about experience the medium. For each of you, which experience would you recommend and why?
What VR experience?
Yeah.
There's a lot of them.
Roomy and Doom VFR.
Yeah. Two of the very best.
Yeah.
Outside of those, which are the obvious answers from us, I really like Onward. If you're into any kind of first-person shooters that are a little more Ghost Recon than Call of Duty, like Onward would be a good choice. Just the teamwork, like anything where you have a team and you have to communicate to work together, I love, because I feel like I'm getting an actual mental exercise outside of just like shooting things, you know.
I like Beat Saber because it gives me a good workout. And DDR for me never really made sense with my feet, but with Beat Saber with your hands, it's great. But obviously that's one experience, right? And that's the goal, is to try as many experiences, because each experience is going to be wildly different from another. Even with first-person shooters, which at this point for a typical game, it's kind of like the same, but in VR is very different for each one.
Yeah.
Even when you add like bullet time in VR is very different from bullet time in a game, because you feel 1,000 times more powerful like playing Super Hot.
Super Hot's awesome.
Versus like, Super Hot on a PC. So just explore, try it out. Like if it's free, download it, play it, uninstall it when you're done.
Yeah, I just played Super Hot on the Quest. Our Quest just came yesterday, and that's pretty awesome because fully untethered, moving around, dodging bullets. You feel like you're in the Matrix. It's a very simple experience too. It's like if you don't move, the time stops. As soon as you start moving, time goes. And it's originally not even a VR game, but it's almost like they had VR in mind because it's perfectly applicable for VR. But I see this as just a game mode in one particular game. This is a very small game. And so there's going to be all these little mini games that are going to just be like single mechanics in larger games in the future.
Kind of like how games started, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember playing Onward with Chance, and I hope he didn't film me, because there was definitely...
I did get
I saw that.
You're on the floor, like,
yeah.
freaking out.
Yeah, there's definitely a point. So I was in the middle of a firefight in this blown out village, and I think I did pretty much what I would do in a firefight in a blown out village. I was on the floor, laying down, as bullets were whizzing over the top of my head through this window. And, I'd get up for a second, and then bullets would start, back down. Yeah.
All right, guys, I think we need to wrap up. So thank you guys again so much for doing this. We really appreciate your time.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.